I watched the man who runs my hometown put 9 bullets into my father's chest. There was no warning, no Miranda rights, just a laugh, a sudden flash of muzzle fire, and my 75-year-old dad crumpling to the pavement like a rag doll. The police report called it heroic self-defense against an armed aggressor. But the video playing on my phone showed the truth. My father's hands were empty. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I must have watched that video 50 times in the last 4 hours. I was stuck in seat 14B on a red-eye flight back to the States, surrounded by sleeping strangers, while my entire world was burning down on a 4-inch screen. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone. Every time I hit replay, I saw the same thing. My dad, Nathaniel, standing in his own driveway, wearing his old grease-stained mechanic's jumpsuit. He looked confused. He was shouting something, but the audio was garbled by wind. And then, Sheriff Victor stepped into the frame. Victor didn't look scared. He didn't look like a cop fearing for his life. He looked like he was at a shooting range. He raised his service weapon, casual as anything, and unloaded the clip. Bang, bang, bang. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch the seat in front of me until my knuckles shattered. But I just sat there, frozen, forcing myself to breathe. I've spent the last 10 years in the darkest corners of the world, serving in a unit that doesn't officially exist. I've seen combat. I've seen bad things happen to good people. But I was always the one holding the rifle. I was always the protector. Now, I was just a son who was 4,000 miles away when his dad needed him most. The video had come from an anonymous number just before I boarded. The text attached was short. They are lying. Come home. When I finally landed and turned my phone back on, the official voicemails started rolling in. One from the sheriff's department. One from a hospital administrator. They all sounded robotic, rehearsed. Mr. Mason, the deputy's voicemail said, there was an incident involving your father. He became violent with law enforcement. He is currently in critical condition at County General. We need you to come in for questioning regarding his mental state. His mental state. They were already building the narrative. They were going to paint Nathaniel as a crazy, dangerous old man to justify shooting him 9 times. My dad was the gentlest man I knew. He fixed lawnmowers for free. He still opened doors for strangers. He had never held a gun in his life. I rented a car at the airport. The drive to my hometown usually took 2 hours, but I made it in 1. The closer I got, the tighter my chest felt. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a crime scene, and the criminal was wearing a badge. I drove straight to the hospital. The ICU waiting room was empty, smelling of antiseptic and old coffee. When the doctor came out, he wouldn't look me in the eye. He's in a coma, son, the doctor said softly. The trauma to his chest, he lost a lot of blood. We've done what we can, but the next 24 hours are critical. If he wakes up, it'll be a miracle. I walked into the room. Seeing him there broke something inside me. My dad looked so small in that bed. Tubes were snake charming out of his mouth and arms. The machines beeped in a steady, haunting rhythm. His hands, those big, rough hands that taught me how to throw a baseball and fix a carburetor, were pale and still. I pulled a chair up to the bedside and sat down. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too angry for tears. I leaned in close to his ear. I'm here, Dad, I whispered. I'm home, and I'm going to fix this. I stayed there for an hour, just watching the monitors, waiting for a sign that he could hear me. Nothing. Eventually, I stepped out into the hallway to get some air. I pulled my phone out again. I needed to see the video one more time. I needed to study it, not as a grieving son, but as the operator I was trained to be. I needed to see what I had missed. I found a quiet corner and hit play. I zoomed in, ignoring the horror of the shooting itself, and focused on the background. I looked at the shadows. I looked at the reflection in the sheriff's cruiser window. And then I saw it. It was at the very beginning of the clip, just before the shooting started. In the background, parked across the street, half hidden behind a row of hedges, was a silver sedan. It wasn't a police car. It wasn't a neighbor's truck. It was a luxury sedan. I knew that car. I knew the dent on the rear bumper. I knew the custom sticker on the back windshield. It was my wife's car. Brooke's car. My blood ran cold. Brooke had told me on the phone yesterday that she was staying with her sister 3 towns over because she couldn't handle the stress of the incident. She said she wasn't anywhere near the house when it happened. So why was her car parked 20 feet away while the sheriff was gunning down my father? I froze the frame. I zoomed in closer. I could see a silhouette in the driver's seat. Someone was watching. Someone was sitting there, witnessing the execution and doing absolutely nothing to stop it. I lowered the phone. The grief was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp knot of suspicion in my gut. I wasn't just fighting a corrupt sheriff anymore. The route was closer to home than I ever imagined. I stood up and walked toward the hospital exit. I wasn't going to the police station. Not yet. I was going home to ask my wife exactly what she was doing in the driveway when my father was shot. I didn't drive back to the hospital immediately. I drove to my childhood home, the place where my father had been shot less than 24 hours ago. The police tape was already gone, which felt wrong. Usually, a crime scene stays tapped off for days, especially when a weapon is discharged. But here, it was like they had scrubbed the driveway clean before the blood even had time to dry. I parked my rental car on the street, exactly where the silver sedan had been in the video. I sat there for a moment, visualizing the angle. From here, whoever was in the driver's seat would have had a front row ticket to the execution. They would have seen my father's hands up. They would have seen the fear in his eyes. I pulled into the driveway and walked into the house. It was eerily quiet. I expected it to be empty, but I found my wife, Brooke, sitting at the kitchen table. She was scrolling through her phone, a glass of white wine in her hand. She didn't look like a woman whose father-in-law was fighting for his life. She looked bored. She jumped when I walked in, nearly knocking over the glass. "Mason," she gasped, standing up and rushing over to hug me. "I didn't hear you pull up. God, I'm so glad you're here." I let her hug me, but I didn't hug her back. Her arms felt like chains. I could smell her expensive perfume, the same scent she wore when we went out on dates. It made me sick. I went to the hospital. I said, my voice flat. "He's in a coma." "I know," she said, pulling back and giving me a look of practiced sympathy. "It's awful. I can't believe he snapped like that. The police said he was screaming at them." I looked her dead in the eye. "Where were you when it happened, Brooke?" She didn't blink. "I told you on the phone. I was at my sister's place in Oak Creek. I didn't even know it happened until the police called me this morning." The lie slid out of her mouth so easily, so smoothly. If I hadn't seen the video, if I hadn't seen the custom bumper sticker on her car in that footage, I would have believed her. She was my wife. I had trusted her with my life. Now, I realized I didn't know her at all. "Right?" I said, forcing myself to stay calm. "Oak Creek. That's far. Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "You're acting weird, Mason. You're not doing that military thing, are you? Getting paranoid. My dad was shot 9 times, Brooke. I think I'm allowed to be paranoid." I turned around and walked out before I did something I regretted. I needed to look the devil in the face. I needed to see Sheriff Victor. The sheriff's station was a brick building downtown, right next to the courthouse. It smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. When I walked in, the deputy at the front desk didn't even look up from his paperwork. "I'm here to see Sheriff Victor," I said. "Sheriff's busy," the deputy grunted. "Take a seat. Tell him Mason is here. Nathaniel's son." The deputy stopped writing. He looked up, his eyes widening just a fraction. He picked up the phone, whispered something, and then nodded to the heavy oak door down the hall. "He'll see you." Sheriff Victor's office was covered in awards. Man of the Year. Community Protector. He was sitting behind a massive mahogany desk, looking every bit the local kingpin. He didn't stand up to shake my hand. He just leaned back in his chair, chewing on a toothpick. "Rough business about your dad, son," Victor said. His voice was deep, gravelly, and completely devoid of warmth. I tried to talk him down. "You have to believe that." I stood in front of his desk, my hands clasped behind my back, falling into the stance I used when briefing officers. My father didn't own a gun, Sheriff, and he had severe arthritis in his shoulders. He couldn't have raised a weapon if he wanted to. Victor chuckled, a dry, ugly sound. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug, Mason. Old men get confused. He came at me. I have a right to go home to my family at night. It was a righteous shoot. I saw the body, I lied. 9 shots. That's not self-defense. That's an execution. Victor's smile faded. He leaned forward, the leather of his chair creaking. Now you listen to me. You've been away a long time. You drive trucks, or whatever it is you do. You don't know how this town works anymore. Your daddy was disturbing the peace. He was dangerous. And if you come in here throwing around accusations, I'm going to start thinking the apple didn't fall far from the tree. It was a threat. Plain and simple. He was telling me to shut up, or I'd end up just like Nathaniel. I'm just here to get his personal effects, I said, changing tactics. His wallet. His keys. Evidence, Victor said, waving a hand dismissively. It's all evidence until the investigation is closed. Now get out of my office before I arrest you for obstruction. I turned to leave. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not from fear, but from the effort it took not to leap over the desk and end him right there. I had to play the long game. I had to be the grieving, helpless son. I walked out of the office and down the hallway. I pushed through the front doors into the cool evening air, feeling the eyes of every deputy on my back. As I reached my car, a young deputy was standing near the entrance, smoking a cigarette. He looked nervous. He kept glancing at the door to make sure no one was watching. As I walked past him, he didn't look at me, but he spoke, low and fast. He's lying, the deputy whispered, staring straight ahead at the street. And he isn't the only one. Be careful who you trust, Mason. Your dad didn't just snap. Someone called us there on purpose. I stopped and looked at him, but he flicked his cigarette away and hurried back inside before I could ask a single question. The warning hung in the air. Someone called us there on purpose. I got into my car and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I knew who made that call. I just needed to prove it. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. The thought of sitting across from Brooke, pretending everything was normal while she lied to my face, made my stomach turn. Instead, I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town and paid cash for a room with peeling wallpaper and a flickering TV. I spread everything I had across the bed. The video on my phone. A printed copy of the police report that I'd pulled from the county records office. A list of names I'd scribbled down. People who lived on my father's street. If someone had called the police on Nathaniel, someone had seen something. The official report said the 911 call came from a concerned neighbor named Grant Fletcher. He lived 2 houses down from my father. According to the transcript, Grant reported that Nathaniel was outside waving a shotgun and threatening to shoot anyone who came near his property. I knew Grant. He was an old-timer who'd lived on that street since before I was born. He used to give me candy when I rode my bike past his house. He wasn't the type to lie, but he also wasn't the type to stand up to Sheriff Victor. The next morning, I drove to Grant's house. It was a small brick ranch with a neatly trimmed lawn and flower boxes under the windows. I knocked on the door 3 times before I heard shuffling footsteps inside. The door cracked open, just wide enough for me to see half of Grant's weathered face. He looked older than I remembered. His eyes were red and sunken, like he hadn't slept in days. "Mason," he said quietly, his voice hoarse. "I heard you were back. Can I come in, Grant? I need to talk to you about what happened to my father." He glanced over his shoulder, like someone might be listening from inside his own house. "I already talked to the police. I gave my statement." "I read your statement," I said. "You told them my dad was waving a gun around and making threats. But Grant, my father didn't own a gun. You know that." Grant's jaw tightened. His hand gripped the edge of the door. "I'm sorry, Mason. I can't help you." He started to close the door, but I put my hand on it, holding it open. "Grant, please. My father is dying in a hospital bed right now. If you know something, if you saw something different." I said, "I can't help you." Grant snapped, louder this time. His eyes were wild, terrified. You need to leave. You need to leave right now before someone sees you here. Who are you afraid of? I asked. Victor. Grant's face crumpled. For a moment, I thought he might cry. He came to my house the morning after it happened. He sat in my kitchen and told me exactly what I saw. He told me what I would say in court if it came to that. And then he reminded me that accidents happen to people who don't cooperate. Do you understand what I'm telling you, Mason? I have grandkids. I have a wife. I can't. His voice broke. He closed his eyes and shook his head. Your father was a good man. But he's already gone, son. Don't make the rest of us pay for something we can't fix. He shut the door in my face. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. I stood there on his porch, staring at the closed door, my chest tight with rage. Victor had gotten to him. He'd threatened an old man into lying. And if he did it to Grant, he'd done it to everyone else on that street. I walked back to my car and sat in the driver's seat, thinking, I needed someone who wasn't afraid of Victor. Someone who had a reason to expose him. That's when I remembered Harper. Harper Caldwell and I went to high school together. She was sharp, stubborn, and never backed down from a fight. After graduation, she went to journalism school and came back to run the local newspaper. She'd written a few articles over the years that questioned the sheriff's department, always walking the line between reporting and outright accusations. If anyone in this town had dirt on Victor, it was her. I found her office above a dry cleaner on Main Street. The door was unlocked. Inside, the space was cramped and cluttered with file boxes, cork boards covered in notes, and a desk buried under stacks of printouts. Harper was sitting at her desk, typing furiously on an ancient laptop. She didn't look up when I walked in. We're closed, she said, not breaking her rhythm. Harper, it's Mason. Her fingers stopped. She looked up, her face shifting from annoyance to surprise. Mason? Holy hell. I heard you were back. She stood up and walked around the desk, studying me like I was a ghost. I'm so sorry about your dad. I tried to get a comment from the sheriff's office, but they stonewalled me. That's why I'm here, I said. I need your help. She crossed her arms. What kind of help? I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. I watched her face as she took it in. The shock, the anger, the recognition that this was bigger than just one bad shooting. Where did you get this? She asked quietly. Someone sent it to me anonymously. The police don't know it exists. At least, I don't think they do. Harper replayed the video twice, her jaw tight. This is murder, Mason. This isn't self-defense. This is a cop executing an unarmed man. I know, but no one will talk. Grant Fletcher lied in his statement because Victor threatened him. The whole town is afraid. Harper walked back to her desk and pulled out a thick file folder. She dropped it in front of me. Your father isn't the first. I opened the folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, copies of police reports, and handwritten notes. Each one documented a case where Sheriff Victor or one of his deputies had used excessive force. 3 elderly property owners, all living on land near the proposed highway expansion. 2 had died. 1 had been hospitalized and later moved into a nursing home. Victor has been clearing people off their land for years, Harper said. There's a development company trying to buy up property for a casino and resort project. But a few stubborn old folks wouldn't sell. So Victor made them disappear. I stared at the files, my mind racing. My father got letters. People kept coming to the house, pressuring him to sell. He refused. Exactly. And when refusing wasn't enough, Victor escalated. He calls it public safety. The rest of us call it legalized murder. I looked up at her. Why haven't you published this? Because I don't have proof that ties Victor directly to the developers. I have patterns. I have suspicions. But I don't have the smoking gun. And the one time I tried to push too hard, someone broke into my apartment and trashed my files. The message was clear. Back off or else. I felt a cold clarity settle over me. This wasn't just about my father. This was about a system built to protect a predator. I'm not backing off, I said. Harper studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Because I'm tired of watching him get away with it. As I turned to leave, Harper called out to me. Mason, one more thing. You should know that the 911 call. It didn't come from Grant Fletcher. I stopped. What? I pulled the records. The call came from a cell phone, not a landline. Grant doesn't even own a cell phone. Someone else made that call and used his name. My blood turned to ice. Do you know whose phone it was? Harper shook her head. The number was unlisted. But whoever it was, they knew exactly what they were doing. They set your father up. I walked out of her office and stood on the sidewalk, the sun beating down on my back. I pulled out my phone and opened my call log. I scrolled back to the day of the shooting. And there it was. A call from Brooks' number. Timestamped 15 minutes before my father was shot. I stared at the call log on my phone screen until the numbers blurred. My wife called my father 15 minutes before he was gunned down. Why? She told me she hadn't spoken to him in weeks. She told me she was at her sister's house. Every lie she had told me since I landed was starting to crumble, revealing something darker underneath. I got back into my car and drove toward the house. My grip on the steering wheel was tight enough to snap plastic. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to rage. I was going to get answers, even if I had to pull them out of her one by one. When I walked through the front door, Brooke was in the living room, packing a suitcase. She looked up, startled, and snapped the case shut. Going somewhere? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. My voice was calm, dangerously calm. Just for a few days, she stammered. My sister needs help with the kids. And with everything going on here, I just need some space, Mason. Space, I repeated. Is that what you need? Or do you need to get away before people start asking questions? She froze. What are you talking about? I saw the call log, Brooke. You called my father's house right before the shooting. What? Her face went pale. She tried to brush past me, grabbing the handle of her suitcase. I don't have to explain myself to you. I called to check on him. That's it. I blocked her path. I didn't touch her, but I didn't move. You called to check on him? Or did you call to make sure he was outside? Did you call to distract him so Victor could get a clean shot? Stop it, she screamed, her voice cracking. You're crazy. You've been gone too long, Mason. You're seeing enemies everywhere. I see an enemy right in front of me, I said softly. I saw your car in the video, Brooke. Parked across the street. Watching. She dropped the suitcase. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. All the fight went out of her. She slumped onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I didn't want him to die, she whispered through her fingers. I swear, Mason. They told me no one would get hurt. Who? I asked. Who told you that? She looked up, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Victor. And the developers. They came to me months ago. They said the land was worth millions. They said if Nathaniel would just sell, we could have everything we ever wanted. We could leave this town. We could start over. So you helped them? I felt sick. My own wife. Nathaniel wouldn't listen, she cried. He was stubborn. He said he'd never sell. Victor said. He said if we could just get him declared incompetent, if we could show he was dangerous, the court would force the sale. They told me to call 911, to say he was waving a gun. They said they'd just take him into custody for a psych evaluation. That's all it was supposed to be. You set him up, I said, my voice trembling with disgust. You made the call that brought a killer to my father's doorstep. I didn't know Victor would shoot him, she sobbed. I was sitting in the car. I saw the lights, and then the shot started. I couldn't move. I was so scared. Scared for who? I asked. For my father? Or for yourself? She didn't answer. She just cried, pathetic and small. I looked at her, the woman I had married, the woman I had loved, and felt absolutely nothing. She was a stranger. A greedy, cowardly stranger who had traded my father's life for a paycheck. Get out, I said. She looked up, confused. What? Get out of my house. Get out of my life. Go stay with your sister. Go stay in hell for all I care. But if I see you again before this is over, I'm going to hand you over to the FBI myself. She scrambled to her feet, grabbed her suitcase, and ran out the door without looking back. I heard her car peel out of the driveway, tires screeching on the asphalt. I stood alone in the silent living room. The betrayal tasted like ash in my mouth. But underneath the pain, there was something else. Focus. Brooke had confirmed it. This was a coordinated hit. Victor, the developers, and even my own wife were all pieces of the same machine. And now I knew exactly how the machine worked. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Harper. "Mason," she said, her voice urgent. "You need to get out of the house. Now." "Why?" "I've been monitoring the police scanner. Victor just put out an APB on you. He's claiming you assaulted your wife and fled the scene. He's sending a SWAT team to your address. He's trying to silence me," I said, grabbing my keys. "He's trying to kill you," Harper corrected. "Get out of there. Meet me at the old lumber yard on the east side. And Mason, don't let them see you." I hung up and ran to the back door. I could already hear the sirens in the distance, getting louder with every second. They weren't coming to arrest me. They were coming to finish the job they started with my father. I slipped out the back door and into the darkness of the woods behind the house. I moved fast and low, just like I had in the mountains of Afghanistan. I was no longer Mason the grieving son. I was an operator in hostile territory, and the war had just begun. I hit the tree line just as the first cruiser screeched into my driveway. I dropped to a crouch behind an old oak tree, watching through the leaves. It wasn't just a patrol car. It was a tactical team. 6 deputies in full riot gear poured out of an armored van, weapons drawn. They didn't knock. They kicked the front door in and swarmed the house like they were raiding a terrorist compound. If I had been in that living room, I'd be dead. "Resisting arrest" would be the headline tomorrow morning. I turned and moved deeper into the woods. The forest here was dense, overgrown with brambles and pine. I knew these woods. My dad and I used to hunt deer back here when I was a kid. I knew where the creek bed cut through the ravine, masking my tracks. I knew how to move without snapping twigs. I made my way toward the old lumber yard, staying off the main roads. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every distant siren made my muscles tense. This was my home, the place where I learned to ride a bike, and now I was navigating it like enemy territory. It took me an hour to reach the lumber yard. It was a rusted skeleton of a building, abandoned since the mill closed in the 90s. Harper's car, a beat-up Honda Civic, was parked deep in the shadows of a collapsed loading dock. I tapped on the window. She jumped, nearly dropping her phone, then unlocked the door. I slipped into the passenger seat, keeping my head low. "You look like hell," she whispered. "Nice to see you too," I said, catching my breath. "What's the situation?" "Bad," she said, turning her laptop screen toward me. "Victor has gone full scorched earth. He's on the local news right now." She clicked play on a video stream. Sheriff Victor was standing at a podium, flanked by serious-looking deputies. "We are currently searching for Mason Miller," Victor said into the microphones. "He is considered armed and dangerous. He has a history of PTSD and violent outbursts. Earlier tonight, he assaulted his wife and fled the scene. If you see him, do not approach. Call 911 immediately." I stared at the screen. "He's painting me as the unstable veteran. It's the perfect cover." "It gets worse," Harper said. "I did some digging into the developer Brooke mentioned. The company is called Apex Holdings. On paper, it's a shell company out of Delaware. But I traced the money. It leads back to a private equity firm run by a man named Julian Thorne." "Who is he?" "He's a fixer," Harper said. "He doesn't just build casinos. He cleans up problems. And right now, the biggest problem standing between him and $100 million payday is your father's land." "So Victor is just the hired muscle," I realized. "Exactly. But here's the thing. Thorne is in town. I found a flight manifest. His private jet landed at the county airstrip yesterday. He's meeting with Victor tonight." "Where?" "The old courthouse. It's closed for renovations, which makes it the perfect place for a private chat." I looked at Harper. "You know what I have to do." "Mason." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You can't go there. It's a trap. If Victor sees you, I'm not going there to fight him," I said, reaching into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a small, high-tech device, a long-range parabolic microphone I had borrowed from my kit before leaving base. I'm going there to listen. Harper's eyes widened. You had that on you. Always come prepared, I said. I need you to drop me off a block away. Keep the car running. If things go south, I need an extract. You're crazy, she said, but she put the car in gear. Let's go. We drove in silence, sticking to back alleys. Harper dropped me off behind the library, a block from the courthouse. The square was dark, lit only by a few flickering street lamps. I moved through the shadows, scaling a drainpipe to get to the roof of the library. It gave me a direct line of sight to the courthouse windows. I set up the mic, aiming it at the second-floor office where a light was burning. I put on the earpiece and adjusted the gain. The static cleared, replaced by voices. Getting messy, Victor, a smooth, polished voice said. That had to be Thorne. The son was supposed to be a non-issue. Now he's a fugitive running around your woods. I'll handle him, Victor's voice growled. My boys are sweeping the county. He won't last the night. He better not, Thorne said. The investors are getting nervous. If that land isn't cleared by the end of the week, the deal is dead. And if the deal dies, Victor, your protection goes with it. Don't threaten me, Victor snapped. I killed the old man for you. I've done your dirty work. You botched the old man. Thorne corrected, cold as ice. He's still breathing in a hospital bed. As long as he's alive, the title can't transfer. Fix it. Tonight. My blood froze. I have a deputy at the hospital, Victor said. 1 injection. Cardiac arrest. It'll look like his heart just gave out from the trauma. Clean. I ripped the earpiece out. They weren't just hunting me. They were going to murder my father in his hospital bed tonight. I scrambled down the drainpipe, hitting the ground running. I didn't wait for Harper. I didn't care about stealth anymore. I sprinted toward the hospital, 3 miles away. My lungs burned, but I didn't slow down. I wasn't a son anymore. I wasn't a soldier. I was a force of nature. And anyone who stood between me and my father's room was going to regret it. I ran through the empty streets, my boots pounding the asphalt in rhythm with my hammering heart. The hospital was 3 miles from the courthouse. 3 miles that could mean the difference between my father living and dying. I cut through backyards, vaulted fences, and stayed off the main roads where patrol cars were circling like sharks. My lungs screamed for air, but I didn't slow down. Every second counted. As I rounded the corner onto Hospital Drive, I saw the building lit up against the night sky. The emergency entrance was busy. Ambulances, people coming and going. But the side entrance near the ICU wing was quiet. That's where they'd go. That's where Victor's deputy would slip in unnoticed. I approached from the parking garage, using the concrete pillars as cover. My eyes scanned the lot, looking for anything out of place. And then I saw him. A deputy in uniform was walking toward the side entrance, hands in his pockets, trying to look casual. But his eyes kept darting around. He wasn't here for rounds. He was here for a murder. I moved fast. I closed the distance between us in seconds, coming up behind him as he reached for the door handle. I grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back, slamming him face first into the brick wall. Where do you think you're going? I hissed into his ear. Get off me, he gasped, struggling. I'll have you arrested. You're here to kill my father, I said, tightening my grip. Victor sent you. What's in your pocket? He didn't answer. I reached into his jacket and pulled out a small medical vial and a syringe. The vial was labeled potassium chloride. Untraceable. Lethal. It would stop my father's heart in seconds and look like natural causes. I pocketed the vial and shoved the deputy hard against the wall. You're going to walk away. You're going to get in your car and drive home. And if I ever see you near this hospital again, I will end you. Do you understand? He nodded frantically, his face white with terror. I let him go. He stumbled backward, then turned and ran toward the parking lot without looking back. I slipped through the side entrance and made my way to the ICU. The hallways were dim and quiet. A nurse passed me, barely glancing up from her clipboard. I kept my head down, walking with purpose like I belonged there. My father's room was at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Nathaniel was still there, surrounded by machines, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. For a moment, I just stood there, relief washing over me. I had made it in time. I pulled a chair up to his bedside and sat down. My hands were shaking. I reached out and took his hand, careful not to disturb the 4 lines. "I'm here, Dad," I whispered. "You're safe. I won't let them touch you." His eyelids fluttered just barely. For a second, I thought I saw something, recognition, maybe. But then his face went still again. The door opened behind me. I spun around, ready to fight. It was Harper. She was breathing hard, clutching her phone. "Mason, thank God. I saw you take off. What happened?" "They sent someone to finish the job," I said, showing her the vial. I stopped him. Harper's eyes went wide. "This is evidence. This is proof that Victor ordered a hit." "It's not enough," I said, shaking my head. "It's his word against ours. We need something bigger." Harper looked at Nathaniel, then back at me. "Mason, there's something you need to know. I got a text from an unknown number while I was waiting for you. It said if you want the full truth about Victor and Thorne, go to the county records building. There's a safety deposit box registered under Victor's name. Whatever is inside, it's important enough that someone on the inside is trying to help." "Who sent the text?" "I don't know. But whoever it is, they're risking their life to give us this information." I thought for a moment. The county records building was on the other side of town. It was a risk, but we needed a smoking gun, something that would bury Victor and Thorne once and for all. "Can you stay here?" I asked Harper. "Watch over him. If anyone comes through that door who isn't hospital staff, call me immediately. I'll barricade myself in if I have to," she said, determination in her eyes. I squeezed my father's hand one more time, then stood up. "I'll be back." I left the hospital through the same side entrance and made my way to Harper's car. The streets were darker now, quieter. The hunt for me had expanded to the highways, which meant the downtown area was temporarily clear. The county records building was a gray stone structure with narrow windows and heavy iron doors. It looked more like a fortress than an office. I approached from the back, where a single security camera hung above the service entrance. I pulled my jacket over my head and picked the lock in under 30 seconds. Inside, the building was silent. Emergency lighting cast long shadows down the hallways. I found the vault room in the basement. The door was locked with a keypad. I pulled out my phone and opened a signal jamming app, then used a bypass technique I'd learned overseas. The lock clicked open. Inside the vault were rows of safety deposit boxes, each marked with a number. I scanned the labels until I found Victor's name. Box 317. I used a lockpick set to open it. Inside was a thick manila envelope. I pulled it out and opened it carefully. What I found made my blood run cold. There were photographs. Crime scene photos of the 3 other elderly victims Harper had mentioned. But these weren't official police photos. These were staged. Pictures of Victor standing over the bodies, smiling. Trophies. There were also financial documents. Wire transfers from Apex Holdings to Victor's personal offshore account. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Payments labeled security consulting. It was a paper trail connecting Victor directly to the developers. And at the bottom of the envelope was a handwritten letter. It was from Victor to Thorne, dated 2 weeks before my father was shot. "The Miller property is the final piece. The old man won't sell. I'll handle it the same way I handled the others. 1 week, and the land is yours." This was it. This was the evidence we needed to destroy them both. I heard a noise upstairs. Footsteps. Heavy boots. Multiple people. They had found me. I shoved the envelope inside my jacket and ran toward the emergency exit at the back of the vault. The door burst open behind me just as I cleared the threshold. I heard Victor's voice echo through the basement. "He's here. Lock down the building." I sprinted up the back stairwell, taking the steps 3 at a time. I burst through the roof access door and found myself on top of the building. Below me, patrol cars were swarming the streets. Spotlights swept the area. I was trapped, but then I saw it. The fire escape on the adjacent building, just 10 feet away. It was a risky jump. One mistake, and I'd fall 4 stories to the pavement below. I backed up, took a running start, and leaped into the darkness. My fingers caught the rusty iron railing of the fire escape, the impact jarring my shoulders. I scrambled over the side, landing hard on the grated platform. Below me, shouts erupted as the deputies saw me. Spotlights swung in my direction, pinning me like an insect against the brick wall. "He's on the roof of the library," a voice bellowed. "Surround the building." I didn't hesitate. I ran down the fire escape, my boots clanging against the metal steps. I hit the alley at a full sprint just as two deputies rounded the corner. I didn't engage. I just ran. I was faster, more agile. I disappeared into the labyrinth of back alleys before they could get a clear shot. I had the evidence. Now I had to get it to Harper. I called her as I ran. "They found me. I have everything. I'm heading back to the hospital." "No, don't," she said, her voice panicked. "The place is crawling with Victor's men. They're searching every room. They're using the manhunt for you as an excuse to get to your dad. You can't come here." I skidded to a stop in a dark alley, panting. "Where do I go?" "The old lumber yard," she said. "It's the only place they won't look. I'll meet you there." I changed direction, heading east. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. But I couldn't stop. Not now. I reached the lumber yard and slipped inside the same collapsed loading dock as before. The minutes ticked by like hours. Every sound made me jump. Every passing headlight made my heart leap into my throat. Finally, Harper's car pulled in, its headlights off. She got out and ran toward me. "Did you get it?" she asked. I pulled the envelope from my jacket and handed it to her. "It's all in there. Photos, financials, a letter from Victor admitting to everything." Harper's eyes widened as she looked through the contents. "My God, Mason, this is enough to put them away for life. We need to get this to the feds," I said. "Someone outside of Victor's control." "I know a guy," Harper said, pulling out her phone. "A reporter in the city who has connections with the FBI's public corruption unit. I'll send him scans of everything. But we need to do it now, before Victor finds us." She sat in her car, using her phone to photograph every document, every picture. I stood watch, my back to the wall, listening to the sirens crisscrossing the town. They were closing in. They were sweeping every block. Just as Harper hit send on the last email, a beam of light cut through the darkness of the lumber yard. A patrol car had turned into the entrance. "They're here," I said, grabbing her arm. "We have to go? Now." We ran toward the back of the yard, where the fence bordered the woods. But it was too late. Another car pulled in, blocking our exit. We were boxed in. Victor stepped out of the first car, a smug smile on his face. "Nowhere left to run, Mason." "Hand over the envelope." "It's over, Victor," I said, standing my ground. "The evidence is already sent. The FBI has it." Victor laughed. "You think I'm scared of the FBI? By the time they get here, you'll be dead, and she'll be a tragic witness who died in the crossfire. It'll be your word against mine, and you'll be too dead to argue." He raised his weapon. His deputies did the same. We were surrounded. Suddenly, a voice cut through the tense silence. "Drop your weapons." State police. Headlights flooded the lumber yard from the main road. 3 state police cruisers had pulled up, blocking Victor's exit. Troopers poured out, their rifles aimed directly at Victor and his deputies. An older, grizzled state police captain stepped forward. "Sheriff Victor, you and your men are under investigation for obstruction of justice and conspiracy. Put your guns on the ground. Now." Victor's face contorted with rage. He was so close to winning, but he was outnumbered. Slowly, reluctantly, he placed his weapon on the hood of his car. His deputies followed suit. The state police captain walked over to me. "Are you Mason Miller?" "Yes. I got a call from a reporter in the city. He forwarded me some very interesting documents. It seems you've been having a busy night." "You have no idea," I said, glancing at Harper. The captain looked at Victor, his eyes cold as steel. "We'll take it from here. The county is under state jurisdiction until our investigation is complete. As the state troopers began cuffing Victor's deputies, I saw a flicker of movement near the back of the lumber yard. It was Victor. He wasn't being cuffed. He was slipping away into the shadows while everyone was distracted. He had a head start, but he didn't know these woods like I did. "He's getting away," I yelled to the captain. "We'll get him," the captain said. "No," I said, my voice low. "He's mine." I took off into the darkness, chasing the ghost who had tried to destroy my family. The hunt was on, but this time I wasn't the prey. I was the predator. The woods were pitch black, but the moon cast just enough light through the canopy for me to see Victor's trail. Broken branches, scuffed earth. He was panicking, running blind, crashing through the underbrush like a frightened animal. I moved silently, a shadow among shadows. My breathing was steady. My focus was absolute. This wasn't a chase. It was a tactical pursuit. I knew exactly where he was going. There was an old hunting cabin about 2 miles north, near the ridge. It was secluded, off the grid. If I were him, that's where I'd go to regroup or make a last stand. I cut across the ravine, bypassing the winding deer trail he was following. I was going to beat him there. 20 minutes later, I was positioned in the tree line overlooking the cabin. A single light flickered in the window. A beat-up pickup truck, Victor's personal vehicle, was parked haphazardly out front. I watched as the door opened and Victor stumbled out, pacing the porch. He was shouting into a satellite phone, his voice carrying on the wind. "Thorne, you have to get me out of here. The state police are swarming the town. They have the files." I crept closer, closing the distance to 30 yards. "I don't care about the money." Victor screamed into the phone. "Send the chopper. Get me to the airstrip. If I go down, I'm taking you with me." He paused, listening to the voice on the other end. Then, with a roar of frustration, he threw the phone against the cabin wall. It shattered into pieces. Thorne had cut him loose. Victor was alone. I stepped out of the tree line, my hands raised slightly to show I wasn't armed. "It's over, Victor." He spun around, his hand flying to the holster on his hip. He drew his backup piece, a snub-nosed revolver, and leveled it at my chest. His eyes were wild, bloodshot, filled with desperation. "You," he spat. "You ruined everything. I built this town. I kept order. And you destroy it all for one stubborn old man." "You didn't build anything," I said, walking slowly toward him. "You stole. You murdered. You preyed on the people you swore to protect." "I did what was necessary," he yelled, his hand shaking. "Progress requires sacrifice. That land was wasted on your father. It was just dirt. We were going to bring jobs, money, a future. At the cost of my father's life?" I asked. "At the cost of your soul?" "Don't talk to me about souls," he laughed, a manic, broken sound. "You think you're a hero? You're a killer, Mason, just like me. You've got blood on your hands from whatever war you fought in. We're the same." "No," I said softly. "We're not the same. I fought to protect people. You fight to own them." He cocked the hammer of the revolver. "Well, let's see who fights better. Say goodbye, hero." Before he could pull the trigger, a deafening crack echoed through the valley. Victor's gun flew out of his hand, spinning into the dirt. He screamed, clutching his wrist, staring in shock as blood welled up between his fingers. I looked toward the ridge. A sniper team from the state police had moved into position while I kept him talking. A red laser dot was steady on Victor's chest. "Get on the ground," a voice boomed over a megaphone. "Do it now." Victor fell to his knees, sobbing, broken. The arrogance was gone. The power was gone. He was just a small, corrupt man kneeling in the dirt. I walked up to him and kicked the revolver away. I stood over him, looking down with cold indifference. "You lose," I said. State troopers swarmed the clearing, surrounding Victor and dragging him to his feet. They cuffed him roughly, reading him his rights. As they led him away, he looked back at me one last time. There was no defiance left in his eyes, only fear. The state police captain walked up to me, holstering his sidearm. "Good work, son." Risky, engaging him alone, but you kept him pinned down long enough for us to set up. "Is my father safe?" I asked. He's under 24-hour guard at the hospital, the captain assured me. No one gets in or out without my approval. The doctors say his condition is stabilizing. He's going to make it. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for days. It was finally over. The threat was neutralized. Or so I thought. As the troopers loaded Victor into a cruiser, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Harper. "Mason," she said, her voice trembling. "We have a problem." "What is it?" "Victor is in custody." "It's not Victor," she said. "It's Brooke. She never went to her sister's house. I just got a notification from the county clerk's automated system. Someone just filed an emergency power of attorney document for your father's estate. It was time-stamped 10 minutes ago." "Who filed it?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Brooke," Harper said. "She's at the hospital, Mason. She somehow got into his room before the guard was posted. If she has that document signed, she can legally pull the plug on his life support." My blood turned to ice. Victor was just the muscle. Brooke was the one who could end it all legally. "I'm on my way," I said, sprinting toward the captain's car. "Get me to the hospital. Now." The war wasn't over yet. The final battle wasn't in the woods. It was in the ICU. And the enemy wasn't a sheriff with a gun. It was my wife with a pen. The state police cruiser flew down the highway, sirens screaming, lights flashing. I was in the back seat, my hands gripping the door handle so hard my knuckles turned white. The captain was driving, his jaw set, pushing the car as fast as it would go. How did she get a power of attorney document? I asked, my mind racing. If she forged your father's signature or had it notarized fraudulently, it wouldn't hold up in court, the captain said. But in the short term, if she convinces a sympathetic doctor that it's legitimate, she could order life support removed before anyone stops her. "She's not getting near him," I said, my voice hard as stone. We arrived at the hospital in under 15 minutes. I jumped out before the car even stopped rolling and sprinted through the emergency entrance. The night nurse tried to stop me, but the captain flashed his badge and waved me through. I took the stairs 3 at a time, bursting onto the ICU floor. Down the hallway, I saw Harper standing outside my father's room, blocking the doorway. Brooke was there, dressed in black, her hair pulled back, looking composed and calm. Too calm. A doctor I didn't recognize stood between them, holding a clipboard, looking confused and uncomfortable. "Mason," Harper shouted when she saw me. "She's trying to have the machines turned off." Brooke turned, her face pale but determined. "Mason, please. This is the humane thing to do. He's suffering. The doctors said he'll never wake up. We have to let him go." "That's a lie," I said, walking toward her slowly. "The doctors told me his condition is stabilizing. He has a chance." "A chance?" Brooke said, her voice breaking. "Look at him, Mason. He's a vegetable. This isn't living. You don't get to decide that," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You lost that right when you made the call that put him in that bed." The doctor looked between us, clearly overwhelmed. "I need to see proper legal documentation before I can authorize anything." Brooke pulled a folded document from her purse and handed it to him. "This is the power of attorney. It was signed 3 months ago. Nathaniel appointed me as his medical proxy in case of incapacitation." I grabbed the paper from the doctor's hands and scanned it. The signature looked convincing. The notary stamp looked official. But something was off. "This is dated 3 months ago," I said. "My father would never have signed this. He didn't trust you. He signed it when you were overseas," Brooke said, tears welling in her eyes. "He was worried about what would happen if something happened to him while you were gone. He wanted someone local to make decisions." "That's convenient," Harper said, stepping forward. "Mason, look at the notary stamp. The date is 3 months ago, but that notary's license was only issued 2 months ago. I checked the state registry before you got here." The doctor took the paper back, squinting at it. "She's right. This document is fraudulent." Brooke's face crumbled. The mask slipped. She grabbed the doctor's arm. "Please. You don't understand. If he wakes up, everything falls apart. The land deal, the money, all of it." The truth spilled out of her in a desperate rush. She wasn't here out of mercy. She was here to tie up the last loose end. If Nathaniel woke up and testified, Brooke would be charged as an accessory to attempted murder. She'd lose everything. Get away from him, I said, stepping between her and the door. Mason, please, she begged, grabbing my shirt. We can still fix this. We can still have the life we planned. Just let him go. He's old. He's lived his life. We deserve ours. I looked into her eyes, searching for the woman I married. But she was gone. Maybe she had never existed. Maybe I had just been too blind to see who she really was. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. He did live his life. And he lived it with honor. Something you'll never understand. The captain stepped forward, 2 officers flanking him. Brooke Miller, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and obstruction of justice. She didn't fight. She just went limp, sobbing as the officers cuffed her and led her away. As she passed me, she whispered, I loved you. No, I said, you loved money. The hallway fell silent. Harper put a hand on my shoulder. It's over, Mason. It's really over. I walked into my father's room and sat down beside him. The machines beeped steadily. His chest rose and fell. I took his hand and squeezed it gently. They're gone, Dad, I said softly. All of them. You're safe now. And then, for the first time in days, I felt his fingers twitch. Just a small movement. But it was there. His eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, they opened. His eyes were unfocused at first, cloudy with medication. But then they locked onto mine. Mason, he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears streaming down my face. You came home, he said, a weak smile forming on his cracked lips. I'll always come home, Dad, I said, gripping his hand tighter. Always. The nurse rushed in, checking his vitals, calling for the doctor. But I didn't move. I just sat there, holding my father's hand, watching him fight his way back to life. Victor was in custody. Brooke was in custody. Thorne was next. The state police were raiding Apex Holdings' offices at that very moment. The whole corrupt empire was crumbling. But sitting there, in that quiet hospital room, none of that mattered. All that mattered was that my father was alive. And I had kept my promise. The days after my father woke up felt unreal. I slept in a plastic recliner beside his bed, half waking every time the monitors beeped a little louder than normal. He drifted in and out, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in a fog of painkillers. Every time he opened his eyes and knew who I was, it felt like winning a war. Outside that quiet room, the world was on fire. Harper kept me updated. The state police had locked down the entire county. Victor was in a maximum security holding facility. Brooke was in a separate wing, on suicide watch. Judge Collin had been let out of his own courtroom in handcuffs after the state attorney general's office unsealed an indictment naming him as a co-conspirator in multiple fraudulent rulings. Apex Holdings' office downtown was raided. Thorne's face was on every local channel. The slick CEO, suddenly unavailable for comment. Corruption, conspiracy, elder abuse, civil rights violations. The charges scrolled across the bottom of the TV like a laundry list of everything rotten about the place I grew up. One afternoon, as my father dozed, there was a knock on the hospital room door. A woman in a sharp navy suit stepped in, followed by the state police captain. She looked mid-40s, composed, the kind of person who'd seen a lot and didn't scare easily. Mason? She asked. Yeah, I said, standing up. Who are you? Fiona Carver, she said, offering her hand. Assistant U.S. Attorney. I'm leading the federal case against Sheriff Victor, Judge Collin, and Mr. Thorne. I wanted to thank you in person. I didn't do it for thanks, I said. I did it for him. I glanced at my father. I know, she said. That's why your testimony is going to land hard. Testimony? I asked. We're moving fast, Fiona said. The evidence Harper sent, plus what you pulled from that box, it's strong enough that we can file federal racketeering charges. But before we even get there, the state is holding a combined arraignment and bail hearing. Media will be there. The whole town will be watching. We want you in that room. Why? I asked. You have the evidence. You don't need me on display. Fiona and the captain exchanged a look. Because up to now, she said carefully, you've just been a name. The son, the unstable veteran. Victor's been using your military background against you in the press, painting you as dangerous, unbalanced. We think it's time people see who you really are. I'm just a guy who came home, I said. She tilted her head slightly. That's not exactly true, is it? Something in her tone told me this wasn't a guess. It was a file, a clearance level, a briefing she'd read. How much do you know? I asked. Enough, she said. Your deployments. Your commendations. The unit you're officially not part of. The fact that you contacted your commanding officer the day you got that video, and he quietly greenlit your freelance recon. The captain smiled faintly. You didn't think we'd put this whole case on the word of some stranger, did you? You had people vouch for you before we ever laid eyes on you. I thought back to that first night, when I'd hit send on the video before boarding the plane. I'd sent it to Harper, but I'd also sent it to a secure address my CO had given me years ago, with a simple note. If anything ever happens to my family, this is where I start. I'd almost forgotten. You're not under investigation for going AWOL, Fiona said. Let's just say your leave status has been adjusted. Officially, you came home to visit your ailing father. Unofficially, you helped us take down a very dirty law enforcement network. And tomorrow, we're going to let the town see who Victor really chose to pick a fight with. I looked at my father, his chest rising and falling, his fingers still wrapped loosely around mine. He'd always thought of me as his kid who drove trucks and did odd jobs. He never liked to hear about anything darker. Do I have a choice? I asked. Always, Fiona said. But if you don't show up, the only version of you they'll know is the one Victor already told. Unstable, violent, dangerous. This isn't just about putting him away. It's about cleaning your father's name. And yours. I exhaled slowly. Fine. I'll be there. She nodded. It's at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Security will be tight. We'll pick you up. After they left, my father stirred. His eyes opened, hazy but focused on me. You okay, son? He croaked. I'm fine, Dad, I said. They're making them answer for what they did. He studied my face for a long moment, like he was seeing a stranger and a familiar boy all at once. You always were different, he said quietly. Even when you were little. Stronger. Quieter. I didn't ask what you really did out there. Didn't want to know. But I knew one thing. What's that? If anyone ever hurt this family, you'd come back like a storm. His fingers tightened weakly around mine. Make sure they remember what they did. Then let it go. Don't carry them with you. I nodded, swallowing hard. I'll try. The next morning, the courthouse didn't look like the same place where Judge Collin had rubber-stamped Victor's shootings for years. State troopers manned the doors. News vans lined the street. Satellite dishes pointed at the sky. Harper met me on the steps, camera hanging from her neck, eyes bright. They're all here, she said. Every outlet in the state. Some national. This is bigger than any story I've ever covered. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Townspeople filled every bench. Some I recognized from my childhood. Some had lost family to accidents on Victor's watch. All of them were watching the front of the room like a theater stage. Victor was brought in first, in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, ankles shackled. Gone was the polished uniform, the swagger. He looked smaller somehow, deflated. But when he saw me seated behind the prosecution table with Fiona, his eyes narrowed. Behind him came Brooke, also in orange, her wrists bound. She scanned the room until she found me. Her stare wasn't pleading anymore. It was resentful, full of the kind of hatred only a person feels when their own schemes turn inside out. Judge Collin shuffled in next, not to the bench, but to the defense table, pale and sweating, his own cuffs biting into soft wrists. A different judge, flown in from another district, took the bench. The clerk read the case caption. The charges. It felt like it took 10 minutes just to list them all. Then Fiona stood. Your Honor, before we address bail, she said. The government would like to put a brief statement on the record for the benefit of the court and the community. The judge nodded. Proceed. Fiona glanced at me. Mr. Miller, would you join me? I walked to the front, feeling every eye in the room follow me. Fiona didn't put me in the witness box. She just had me stand beside her, facing the judge, but turned slightly so the gallery could see my face. Your Honor, she said, the defense has already begun seeding a narrative in the press that Mr. Mason Miller is an unstable, violent man whose actions should cast doubt on the government's case. We believe context matters. She held up a thin folder. For the record, Mr. Miller is an active duty member of United States Special Operations with multiple commendations for valor. He has served this country in classified theaters of operation. When he received a video of his 75-year-old father being shot 9 times by Sheriff Victor, he did not pick up a weapon. He picked up a phone. He contacted a journalist. He contacted his chain of command. He gathered evidence. He risked his life not to kill, but to expose. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I heard my name whispered, new weight attached to it. Fiona continued. Sheriff Victor did not attack a crazy vet. He attacked the father of a man who has spent his adult life doing, in the shadows, what this badge on my lapel asks me to do in the light, protect the innocent. And he underestimated both of them. Victor stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Like all this time, he'd thought he was stepping on an ant, only to realize it was a landmine. The judge nodded slowly. Noted, Ms. Carver. Fiona turned to me. Mr. Miller, do you wish to say anything to the court? I hadn't planned to speak. But looking at Brooke, at Victor, at Judge Collin, and then at the faces in the benches, the old neighbor who'd been threatened, the widow of one of Victor's other victims, I knew silence would be a kind of cowardice. Yeah, I said. My voice sounded strange in the hushed room. Just one thing. I looked straight at Victor. You shot my father 9 times in his own driveway, I said evenly. You thought you were just clearing an old man off a piece of land. You didn't know who his son was. But it wouldn't have mattered if I was a soldier, a mechanic, or a janitor. You picked the wrong family, Sheriff. Not because of me. Because he raised me not to bow to men like you. Then I turned to Brooke. And you tried to sell that man's life for a nicer zip code. You already lost. I faced the judge again. I don't want revenge. I just want them somewhere they can't hurt anyone ever again. The judge studied me for a long beat, then turned to the defendants. Bail is denied. All 3 will be held without bond pending trial. The gavel came down. Reporters exploded into motion. The room filled with shouts, flashes, movement. Victor twisted in his cuffs as deputies led him away, his composure cracking. This isn't over, he shouted. You think prison changes anything? Developers will still build. Money still wins. Maybe, in some places, he'd be right. But not here. Not anymore. As they took him through the side door, he looked back one last time. And in that look, buried under the rage, was something else. Fear. He finally understood who he'd been up against. 6 months later, the town felt different. The silence was gone. On Main Street, people lingered, talking on sidewalks instead of hurrying to their cars. Kids rode bikes down my father's street again. The cloud of fear that had hung over this place for a decade had finally lifted. The trials were swift. With the mountain of evidence Fiona had compiled, there was nowhere to hide. Julian Thorne, the developer, was indicted on federal racketeering charges, and his empire crumbled under investigation. Judge Collin, stripped of his robes, was sentenced to 20 years for his part in the conspiracy. Brooke took a plea deal. 10 years. I saw her once during the proceedings, across the courtroom. She looked hollowed out, a ghost of the woman I once knew. I felt a pang of something. Not love, not hate, just a deep, weary sadness for the life we'd both lost. And Victor? He got life without parole. No grand speeches, no final outburst. Just a quiet man in an orange jumpsuit who would never see the outside world again. The monster was finally in his cage. My father was sitting on the front porch in his favorite rocking chair, a glass of iced tea on the table beside him. He was thinner, and a network of scars crisscrossed his chest, a permanent reminder of the day he almost died. He moved slower, but his eyes were clear. He was alive. I sat down in the chair next to him, handing him the newspaper. The front page had a small article about the town council voting to turn the seized Apex Holdings land into a public park. A park, my father said, reading the headline. He chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. Well, I'll be. Guess nobody's building a casino after all. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just watching the cars go by. You putting in for leave again? He asked, not looking at me. No, I said quietly. I put in my papers last week. It's official. I'm done. He nodded slowly, taking a sip of his tea. Figured you might. All this, it changes a man. It wasn't the fighting that changed me, Dad. It was having something to fight for right here. He looked out at the driveway, the patch of asphalt where he'd fallen. For a moment, a shadow passed over his face. Then it was gone. This land, he said, gesturing with his glass. It was never about the dirt. Your grandmother was born in this house. I was born in this house. It was about having a place to call home. A place no one can take from you. I looked at his hands, scarred and worn from a lifetime of hard work, resting on the arms of the chair. I thought about Victor's rage, Brooke's greed, Thorne's cold ambition. They had wanted to own something. My father just wanted to belong to it. I realized then what quiet revenge really was. It wasn't about burning down your enemy's house. It was about rebuilding your own, brick by brick, while they watched from the ashes. It was about sitting on your front porch, in the sun, breathing free air, knowing you had won not by destroying, but by enduring. My father turned to me, a small, proud smile on his face. You did good, son. You did real good. And in that moment, sitting beside the man whose life I had saved, I knew I was finally home. What would you do if you were faced with a betrayal so deep it threatened to destroy everyone you loved? It's a question that cuts to the bone, and we thank you for coming on this journey with us. If stories like this, about the fight for justice and the unbreakable strength of family, mean something to you, we'd be honored if you join our community by liking this video and subscribing for more. Let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from today. We love seeing how far these stories travel. We're always looking for the next story to tell. What kind of stories do you love the most? Betrayal? Epic revenge? Emotional healing? Let us know in the comments, and we'll bring those stories to life for you. We'll see you in the next amazing story. Until then, take care.